You are missing out on an entire category of clients if the motion graphics on your explainer video only look clean and serious like the Selar style. You are turning away those clients who want this. This is the lovable style. It uses character appeal to sell everything, and clients pay premium rates for this look. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you one simple rigging tricks in After Effects that instantly gives your character that signature bounce and friendliness. Boot your After Effects, let's do this. You can use the timestamp in the video description to move around the video. You can either skip forward to go to area that most interests you. So now let's start by creating the search bar that you saw in the beginning of that explainer video. So on the top toolbar, go to this rectangle tool, select it and draw a rectangle long one like this. Then make sure the color is black and then reduce the stroke width. Hold down the Control key to move the anchor point to the center of the shape layer. Make sure it is still selected on the timeline. Then you go to the right side of your screen, then open the Align window and align this vertically and horizontally to the center. Now we need to rename this shape layer so that we keep things organized, because there are going to be lots of layers in this animation. So we're going to name this Search. Beautiful. So now let's expand the rectangle 1 and also expand the rectangle part 1. You will see the roundness here. Pull it all the way until the shape is like this on your preview window. Let's create a null object to control the search. We are going to right click, go to new, and then select a new null object. Also, align the anchor point to the center of the null object, and then also align it to the center of the preview window using the align panel right here. So we're going to name this search control. Then we're going to make this search its child. Now we have this. It is difficult to see anything right here, so we're going to create a background. Right click and add a new solid layer. Now we're going to name this BG for background, and then we're going to choose these lovable colors. Then move it below the layer hierarchy. So now we have this. You can always increase this search outline. We're going to need to move this control, that is this search controller. Hit P on the keyboard to reveal the position, then move it to the right like this. Beautiful. So, but this is not the size we want it to be at this point. So we're going to use the layer property to increase this search bar. So we're going to go to rectangle 1, then rectangle transform, that is transform rectangle 1. Then we're going to increase the scale here. We don't need this styling right now because we're going to change all of this later. Now let's change these colors for visibility's sake. Now we have this. Let's start animating this now. For the search bar control, select it. We're going to make sure our time indicator is at 0. Then you set a keyframe at 0. Then you move to frame 25 and create another keyframe by hitting this diamond icon to the left. Now we're going to move to 2 seconds 11 frames forward in time, and then create another keyframe by hitting the same diamond icon. Now we have 3 keyframes. So this last keyframe, we are going to align the position keyframe. That is, we're going to change the value so that this controller will come to the center. So we're going to use the align bar instead of just manually changing the values here. So I'll align it vertically to the center like this. So meanwhile, I'm going to come back to this second keyframe at 25 frames. Then I'm going to move it slightly to the left. By the way, in After Effects, if you are moving things left to right or right to left, meaning you are adjusting the X values. Now let's select the shape layer, which is the search bar. Hit P on the keyboard to reveal the position property. We're going to come back to 0. Then we set a keyframe for the position. Then we're going to go to 1 second 22 frames forward in time. Then we're going to also set a keyframe at this point. Now let's come back to 0. If we come back to 0, we're going to slightly alter the X value so that the shape will move to the right a bit, just slightly. We are going to animate the scale of the shape layer. So let's expand its properties. We're going to go to transform shape 1, that is transform rectangle 1. Open the content and you see the transform property. So on the transform rectangle, we are going to add a keyframe to the scale. But we're going to add a keyframe to the scale at 1 second 22 frames forward in time, which is the second keyframe of the position. Then we'll add a scale keyframe right here. Then we'll move to 207, that is 2 seconds and 7 frames forward in time, and set another keyframe. Here we're going to create a keyframe by hitting the diamond icon to the left here. Then we'll go to 3 seconds forward in time and then set another keyframe as well. Now let's go up to the rectangle one, expand it, you will see the roundness. Then move your time indicator to 2 seconds 25 frames forward in time. Then you're going to set a keyframe for the roundness. Then you move to 3 seconds 10 frames forward in time, and then create a second keyframe at this point. This roundness keyframe, we're going to use this as a transition keyframe. You'll find out later. Now that we have all our keyframe for the shape layer, select it, hit U on the keyboard so that we have only the keyframes visible. Now, let's make changes to the values of the keyframe for the scale property of the shape layer on the timeline. Now, we're going to move to the second keyframe on the timeline, 1, 2. Here, we're going to scale this down. We can always come back to adjust this. Then we're going to go to the last keyframe and scale this down quite a bit further. Do not worry if it is not looking exactly what you want yet. We can change this at any time. If you go like this, you see what we have now. So now let's make adjustments so that we can get that fluid movement you saw on the lovable explainer videos. So to do that, we're going to need to change the linear nature of our keyframes. But before that time, select the search controller, come back to 0. We're going to move this on the x-axis a bit to somewhat like this. So let's make adjustment to all of these keyframes except for the roundness, because we're going to need to change that later as well. So now let's select all the keyframes here. For this, hold down Shift to select the top one for the controller. Then we're going to right click on it, go to Keyframe Assistant, then Easy Ease. Now let's set our preview limit so that we can preview this and see what we have. I want you to understand every change you make have an impact to the movement and fluidness of this animation. So you can see, even though we have changed this from linear to these curve graphs, it's still not as smooth as the lovable animation. So let's make some adjustments. Now let's select the position keyframe for the controller first, then switch to the graph editor. We're going to select this keyframe right here and pull this graph until we have it like this. Then we select this one right here and move it like this to 0. That way this comes fast and then slow. Beautiful. So now let's go back. For the shape layer, select the position property as well. Go into the graph editor and make the same changes you made with the controller. Beautiful. So now let's preview and see. You will see a whole lot of difference, but it's still yet not as fluid as we want it. Now let's make further changes. So now let's go back to the position keyframe for the controller. Select any of the keyframes right here. Switch to the graph editor. Now we're going to pull this handle for this keyframe so that it will slowly move into that side like this. So now what we're going to do now is go back to this scale keyframe. Once you select it, we're going to switch to the graph editor, and then we have this go also slow to that size. This will go a long way to make a lot of changes. If you preview now, you will see a whole difference. Even though not as fluid as we want it yet, but this is getting close. So what we need to do now is just to offset this keyframe, because if you look at the controller and the shape layer, they share similar position keyframe at the same point. So that is going to reduce the fluidness. So what we need to do is to take this position keyframe for the shape layer and move it further. So even though everything is still fluid the way we want it, I can still see some irregular movement. Even though we want the bouncy movement, it shouldn't be very obvious. So now, what is the problem here is because this scale keyframe is not aligning well with this last position keyframe for the controller. So all we need to do now is to move our time indicator to this keyframe and then move the keyframe here. If you preview now, you're gonna see that everything is a whole lot smoother. Beautiful. You see that there's no that jiggling in between anymore. Okay guys, now we have this. Let's create that point. At that point where this search bar morphs into a square form. So there are many ways to do this, but I'm going to show you the simplest method, and yet it is very effective, like the complex method. So now to do that, instead of keyframing the part here, we're going to create a new rectangle on top of this. So we're going to go to the top toolbar again and select the rectangle tool. Then we're going to create that rectangle here. Now make sure you move the anchor point to the center and also align it to the center. Then we're going to first of all make it a child of this search bar controller, because it needs to be controlled by the same controller, because it needs to look like it is the same object transforming. So we're going to make it a child. Then let's change the hierarchy directly on top of the search here. So the next thing we're going to do now is to hit U on the first shape layer, which is the search bar. Come to the last keyframe for the scale. Then this is the point where we want this square to start showing. So we're going to trim that to that point. Beautiful. So we're going to hit S for the scale for that shape layer and set a keyframe for the scale. Then we're going to have to move forward in time. Let's expand our preview limit. Let's move forward in time to this point and then set another keyframe. We're going to set another keyframe by hitting the diamond icon to the left of your timeline. Now that we have this both keyframe, we're going to come back to the first keyframe. Here we need to scale this down until it fits into that search bar, somewhat like this. We're going to have to scale it unproportionally like this. Let it be inside so that at this point it is not visible until this point it starts becoming visible. Beautiful. We're going to select the keyframe again. We're going to right click and then ease the keyframes. Like I said, you can always hit F9 to do this. Then we're going to select this last or first keyframe, switch to the graph editor. Then we're going to edit the speed graph to look like this so that it will go in slowly first. Then we're going to adjust this keyframe here. Let it be at 325. Somewhere at this point. Let's move it slightly to 325. So now that we have it like this, then coming in like that. So this is where we work on the keyframe for this search bar roundness. So now we're going to go to the second keyframe roundness, reduce the roundness in such a way that it's almost beginning to turn to square. So let's just set the timing Sometimes you may need to change this color so that you see the contrasting and know what you are doing. We're going to scale this quite up a bit so that it will tally with this part of the search bar. So hide it here and change its color. So if you preview now, this is what it looks like. Let's unhide it. Now, the next thing we need to do to finish this part off is to animate the scale of the shape controller right here. That is the search controller. So we're going to hit U and then hold down Shift to hit S. That way we can see everything clearly. So let's move our time indicator to about this point and set a keyframe for the scale property. Then we're going to move forward in time to about this point. Change the scale values to 135. So if you preview now, this is what you have. If you like, you can also edit the speed graph for the scale for the controller. But at this point, this is what we have. Beautiful. You have seen how we animated the elements and make the shape layer morph from one shape to the other. Now let's add that gradient bouncy friendly look. Now we're going to pre-compose everything on our timeline. So Ctrl A to highlight everything, then Ctrl Shift C to pre-compose it. Then we're going to call this search. Then make sure you move all attributes to the new composition, then you hit OK. Now the first thing we're going to do is to add a fill effect. So we're going to go to Effects and Presets. On the Effects and Preset, let's search for Fill Color. Then we're going to drag and drop it into the layer. This is going to give us, I think the pre-composing, we shouldn't have pre-composed everything because the background is there. So we're going to go into this to fix that. Let's go. So select the background, Ctrl X. That is going to cut it out of that place. Then you go back to the main comp again, then Ctrl V to paste the BG, then you move it down. So this way, if we're adding the fill effect now, it is not going to affect the entire preview. So let's select it now and add the fill effect. So now we have this. So let's change this color to black. This is the basic black for the search. Ctrl D on the keyboard to duplicate it. Then we're going to select the bottom one. We're going to change that to red. So we're going to hit S on our keyboard to scale it up a bit larger than what the other one is. Let's change the red color to orange instead. This is going to be close to the lovable color. So now we're going to add the Gaussian blur effect. So we're going to increase the blurriness. I think this is too much, so I'm going to bring it down to 120. Beautiful. So I'll stick to this for now. So what I'm going to do now is to duplicate this again, and then I will select the bottom one. I'm still going to scale it up, but before I scale that up, we need to change the color so that we can see exactly what we are doing. So now hit S on the keyboard. We're going to scale this up, then duplicate it again. And we're going to select the bottom one again and scale that up. But this time around, we're going to reduce the blurriness to about 80. And then we're going to change the color to a brighter color so that we can see what the difference is like. Beautiful. You can already see that right at the top there. We're going to have to duplicate this again one more time. Then we'll select the bottom one. We're going to change this to blue, somewhat like this. Then we scale up. Then this time around, we're going to increase the blurriness to 160 or 150 thereabout, depending on the looks you are going for. So if we come back here, we will see what we have done so far. Beautiful. So I'm going to just adjust some of the color to look like the lovable color. I'm going to do that off record. So now with all the duplicates ready, if you preview now, this is what you have. We have the motion, but that dynamism and bounce effect that is behind the colors is not there yet. So let's do that. So now with this, we are going to create a new controller to control the duplicate. So go to this and then create a new null object. So make sure you also align the controller to the center, that is the anchor point to the center, and align it to the center as well. So we're going to name this duplicate control. So let's move it below the first one, which is the original one that has the black effect. If you check it, it's one that has the black fill effect. So now that we'll move it below it, so we're going to select all of these duplicates now, all of these duplicates, and then make them a child of the controller, that is duplicate controller. So we're going to come to the timeline. Here, we're going to need to offset these last 3 duplicates. We need to offset them. So select the 3 and move them quite a bit. Deselect one and just offset them few frames away from each other. So that is going to give us our first dynamism. You can see that first dynamism has been solved. So the next thing we're going to do now is to select the controller, that is the duplicate controller, hit P on the keyboard. We're going to animate the position property. So if you move back to 0, you see that all of that duplicate is hidden behind. We don't want that. So let's come back to when it's exactly at the center, which is here. Then we're going to set a keyframe for the position. Then we'll come back right this point, and then we're going to move this on the X axis just a bit. Select it, then you ease. Also edit the speed graph for smoother motion. So I'm going to want it to end up slowly. Then I'm going to come here also from this point where it is about going back right there. So let me expand this actually to this point. Then here I will shift S to expose the scale property and set a scale keyframe right here. Then I'll move right to this point. I'm gonna scale this on the Y axis alone to something like this. Also ease. We have all of this movement. You can see now the dynamism. Yes, just because we offset this and then add some position keyframe, it has now become very dynamic, not following the first motion as it were. So we can still offset this quite a bit on the timeline if you want to increase how soon or how far it gets in. So if you preview now, you can see the difference. Beautiful. Here, I'm going to select this second duplicate because the color is different. So I will select the second duplicate. I'll pull in. I'm going to scale this on the Y axis too, so that I'll have that bluish tint around it. You see that bluish tint around that. Beautiful. That is what I want to get. Then I will hit T to expose the opacity. So once I get here, I want that blue to disappear around this point. I want it to disappear around this point. So I will set a keyframe for the opacity. Then come right here. All of these are secondary motions. If you don't add it, you're going to have the same motion, but adding it makes it more professional and more sleek and colorful, like the lovable style. So you don't need to do the easing for this opacity keyframe. Beautiful. You can see how beautiful that disappears. You have seen how beautiful the animation is looking already. Now let's add that character rigging that will make the search look like it is being typed and clicked. To add the text, that is the motion graphics inside the search bar, that is what we're going to do now. On the project manager window, we're going to select the search composition, the one we pre-composed earlier. Now we're gonna Control D on the keyboard to duplicate it. So after you duplicate it, we're gonna enter key, hit the enter key to rename this. We're gonna name it search text. So double click to open it. We're gonna hide these two, but before then we're gonna select this first layer and just make it a stroke so that we can use it as a guide to add our text. So let's make the fill none and then set the stroke color to any color because it's simply a guide. We don't need to show it later. If you like, you can even make it a guide layer. If you right click on it, you can just go here and make it a guide layer. So even if we leave the lines now, that is not going to show on the final exposure, that is on the final export. So we can just simply keep using this as a guide. So now let's hide this top one first. So now let's add a text. The text is going to be ask Lovable to create. So your text can be different. It all depends on the company you are working for or what your explainer video should be. So we're going to just simply style it using this text right here. So ask Lovable to create. Then we're going to move it to this spot here. But one thing you can do before all of this here, now that we have moved it here, we can just simply parent it to the controller here so that if it moves, if the controller moves, the text moves. So now let's parent it. Let's make it a child of the controller. So now if we scrub through the timeline, you see that everything moves together. I think there's a mistake here. We don't need to make it a child of the search controller because if you look at this from here, it stopped going and following the search box. So meaning we have to make it a child of the main search box at the bottom, the one we made a guide layer. So we're gonna select it again and make it a child of this search. So if you scrub now, you see that it is following up. Yes, beautiful. That is what we want. So now we're gonna hide this box here. So now we have this. So all you're gonna need to do now is just to change the color so that it will be very gray. That is, it shouldn't be very visible, you know. So let's change the color to a darker gray, somewhat here. So I can move this away so that I can see the color I'm giving it. Beautiful. So it is not written on stone. Actually, the more you leave it, the more better the visibility. So I'm going to just style it a bit, move it toward the right, just to center it on the y-axis. You can use the align tool to center it as well. So if you open the align, you can center it with this one. You see him perfectly centered now. So now let's create the second text. So we're going to duplicate this, Control D on the keyboard because it has to be the child. The duplicate is going to be a different text. So first we're going to select it and we change the style. If we go to the property here, first we're going to make it white. So we're going to change the text, select the text tool on the top toolbar. Then we're going to highlight all the text by Control A. So this is going to say, create a social shopping marketplace. Let's move back to see how this is doing. Beautiful. This is too large, so we're going to need to style it further, reduce the font size. Beautiful, to something like that. Because at toward the left here, there's going to be a search button, so we're going to need to make this very okay. So we can also reduce the other one. We can reduce it to go down a bit. So let's pull in to see what we're doing. Beautiful. So after you do that, then we'll align it back again. So we're going to also change it to a thick font. Let's go back to the property window. Then we're going to make it bold font, I mean to say. So let's select the bold or book. So I'm going for the bold. So you can search or choose what style you want, but that has made it a bit too big. So let me go with the book. I think this is better because I still have my space for the for the search button. From here, ask lovable to create should go out. So I'm going to hit T on the keyboard to set a keyframe for the opacity, then move forward in time and set the opacity to 0. Select the top text. We need to make it look like it is being typed on the screen. So if you go back to effects and presets, so let's search for typewriter. So this is the typewriter effect. Then we're going to add it to the text above it. So you can see if you scrub now, it is being typed like what a keyboard will do. After you add this, hit U on the keyboard so that you see the keyframe. This is the time to time it. So we're going to make it start from here where this disappears. Then we're going to select all these keyframes, then move them backward. Beautiful. Then I'm going to hold down Alt. Once I hold down Alt, it's going to allow me reduce the gap between these keyframes. I think I'm gonna leave it at this point. So the next thing I'm gonna do now is to add that typing cursor. So by default also we have it in effects and presets. So you can either create your own depending on the style you are going for, but I'm gonna use this blinking cursor on the typewriter effect. So I'm gonna double click it. That is gonna create a new layer on the timeline. And so what I'm gonna do is to give it its own control. So I'm going to create a null object. I'm going to pull in. So once I pull in, I'm going to make sure it is at the center of the blinking cursor like this. So I'm going to make the blinking cursor a child of this null object. If you like, you can rename it. There is nothing much about this composition, so I'm not going to rename that null object. So I'm going to select the null object now and then center it properly. So now it is at the center. So I'm going to use this position here. So I'm going to come to this first keyframe for the typewriter. Then I'm going to select this and hit P on the keyboard for the position property and then set a keyframe at this point. I will move it on the X axis so that it will go down from the beginning. I want it to start right from here. We may need to adjust the timing later. So, but we just need to have the animation first. After you get the animation, you can then do the timing. So I'm going to set it from here. Then I'll go back to the last keyframe for the typewriter effect. Then I'll pull in and make sure it comes to the end right here. Beautiful. If you like, you can reduce the typewriter size. Whatever you like is good. So if you preview now, it is going to give you this. Then you can adjust the timing here so that it will go along with the typing. Beautiful. So the problem here is that we need to make it a child, the controller here, a child of that first search shape. So we're going to go down here. Then we pick with the parenting to that shape. This one we made the guide layer. Yes. So now everything will move along as we go. So now because we made it a child, everything has changed. So let's adjust it again. So let's go to the last keyframe and then adjust it to the end. Beautiful. Everything is in line now. The only thing you need to do is to trim out this blinking cursor from here and also trim it out toward the end here, because immediately it's finished typing, we shouldn't see it again. Control Shift D to split it at that point and delete the excess. So let me see if the timing is okay. Beautiful. I'll go back to the main composition, which is this one. So I'm going to drag from the project manager window, I'm going to drag this search text to the top of this layer. So now we have our text perfectly fitted to this. So if you preview, you will see what we got. Beautiful. So now it is time to create the button, the search button. Let's go back to that composition again, that search text, and create the search button right here. Now to create the search button, we're going to create a new composition. Control N on your keyboard to start a new composition. We're going to call this search button. So, but we're going to make this 500 by 500 in resolution because we need it to be square pixel. So the duration for the animation should be the same thing with what we have before. So now all you need to do now is to go to the standard toolbar right here on the top, then select the ellipse tool. Once you got the ellipse tool, double click it. That is going to create a perfect circle at the center here. Did I just double click the square? So let me undo. So let me select the ellipse tool properly. Now you can double click. That is going to create a perfect circle here. So let's create a fill color and then set the stroke first to none. So you can simply hit S on the keyboard just to scale it down a bit. Something like this. So let's fit this to comp so that we can see everything clearly. So we can drop the opacity actually. I'm going to drop the opacity a bit to about 70%. That way it is showing over the black a bit because this is too white. But you can also leave it if you prefer it to be that pronounced. So I'm going to leave it like this. So, you know, with Lovable, they made everything look colorful and uneasy. That is, it is not simplified like what you have with every other website or SaaS website. So because of that, they created a unique search button. So to do that, so we're going to pick the rectangle tool again. Once you pick the rectangle tool and make sure no layer is selected on the timeline, then we're going to draw a rectangle like this. Beautiful. So we're going to curve the edges. To do that, let's open the rectangle one here and then open the rectangle part. Then we're going to increase the roundness just slightly, something like this. So we're going to use the layer styling to style this. So first you right click, go to layer styles, and then add a gradient overlay. Beautiful. So we're going to go to the timeline, expand the gradient overlay on the layer style menu on the timeline. Then first we're going to turn it, twist it to something like this. After we set the angle of the gradient, we can then edit the gradient colors, select it. The dark side is going to be orange, warm orange like this, and the light side is going to be purple. Then we hit OK, go to layer style, and then we select bevel and emboss. So the bevel and emboss made it a bit like a button. So if you like, you can leave the default setting for the bevel and emboss like this. So, or you go in and reduce the bevelness. So, but for now, I'm going to leave it like that. I can always go back and make changes. That is the beauty of the structure of this animation. So we're going to select the rectangle tool again. Then we're going to create a second one. To somewhere like this. Beautiful. So we're also going to go in and make it round. Then we can hit P to drop the position to something like this. Yes, so that it will overlap a bit. So instead of styling this all over again, so what we're going to do is to just select this one we have styled. Then we're going to go to the layer style with this one, then Ctrl C on your keyboard to copy it. Then we select the top one, Ctrl V to paste the layer style, and we have all we need here. So the only thing we need to do now is to change the color. So we're going to expand the layer styling for this shape layer we just pasted. Then we're going to go to the gradient color and then edit gradient. So we're going to set we're going to set this first one to yellow. So select both layers and try to center it visually. It must not be perfect this time, so hit P on the keyboard for both of them. Then we're going to use the bottom one to change the position. Beautiful. I think this is okay. So all we need to do now is to go back to the search text here. Then we're going to drag. Let's come here. Let's come to where we can see the entire search bar. Then we're going to drag this search button from the project manager window and then drop it into the timeline. So we're going to hit P on the keyboard and position it properly to that side. Also hit S to scale it down. So you can select it on the preview window and manually move it around to somewhat like this. This is what we have on the lovable. So on the lovable, so now we just need to make it a child of that same shape layer, that first guide layer. So let's highlight all and collapse everything. Then we'll select this one and then pick with it to that first guide layer, the main search bar. So now everything moves together. Beautiful. At this point, because of visualization on the preview window, we can hide that first guide layer, even though it's not going to show on the final render, but visually it is distorting my interest. Beautiful. It is more cleaner without it. So this way we can go back to the main composition now and then preview everything together. Beautiful. So now let's add the mouse cursor. So now let's get the mouse cursor from the project manager window on the asset folder. Prior to the tutorial, I already brought in this mouse pointer. So I created this in Adobe Illustrator. So you can also do it in After Effects, but I wanted to be able to use it or reuse it in every project. So I made it inside Adobe Illustrator. So the first thing I'm going to do right here is to add a shadow. So let me bring it to the top here where I can see the color. So I'm going to add a shadow. Now I'm going to change the distance. I'm just going to increase it quite a bit till I can see it somewhere here. Then I'm going to change the angle so that it will come by the left here, down left, somewhere here. Then I'm going to increase the feather so that it will be soft. Beautiful. So I can equally drop the opacity and then increase the distance if I want to. So I will just reduce the distance, then drop the opacity from 50 downward a bit. Nice. So what I'm going to do now is to move the anchor point, because the mouse pointer click doesn't happen from the center of the arm. It happens from the finger, so it needs to be controlled from there. It is scaled through there. So to have that effect, what we need to do is to hit Y on the keyboard to activate the anchor point tool. Then we move it to that tip of that finger that is pointing. So hit V to drop the anchor point tool and then drag the mouse pointer and bring it directly overhead the search button right here. So now we need to scale it down. Hit S on the keyboard to bring this down a bit. You see, as we scale, it scales toward the hand, toward the finger, I mean to say, instead of scaling at the middle of the palm. So I'm going to leave it like this. The visual representation depends on what you want, but I'm trying to have something very close to what Lovable have. But in your own case, you can just play around with the size. So, but I'm going to leave this like this for the visibility's sake. If it's smaller than this, I doubt if you're going to see it on the YouTube compression. So now what I'm going to do is to look for a place where it has to click. Now here, beautiful. So from here, it has to click from here. So now let me center the arms correctly here. Beautiful. So here I will set a keyframe for the scale. Then I will move forward in time. I'll move the keyframe backward a bit. So now that I have the keyframe backward a bit, then I'll just scale it down at this point a bit to look like it is clicking. Beautiful. So I'll move forward. So once you move forward here, you need to make it click further. That is, make it smaller, like it is clicking. Do not worry that it is not on the search bar anymore. We're going to fix that. So now let's come back here to the first keyframe. Then hold down Shift key and hit P on your keyboard so that we can see the position property for the same layer. So set a keyframe for that. So we are going to come back. Let's get back to this point. We'll pull in our preview window in. Then we're going to drag this hand to put it outside the preview of the preview actually. So now you can come up with a different approach. This is just a guide for you to know exactly how to do these things. So now I'm going to move it to follow that particular push in. So somewhat like this is okay. Let's select all the keyframes right here. Then right click on it and then easy ease. So now if we move here, you will see that at a point this scales out. So we're gonna add another keyframe here at this point. So we're just gonna copy this last keyframe, Ctrl C and Ctrl V. Then we're gonna come here when that transformation happens here. Then we move the mouse out of the preview because we're gonna add a web page here. So we're gonna move it right at the bottom here, somewhere here. After previewing, the only thing I want to add to this mouse movement before we proceed to the next section of this course is I want to make sure that starts coming very slowly. So let's end it slowly. Let's pull the graph editor to look like this. Now if you preview that part, you will see it makes a whole lot of difference. Beautiful. So guys, you have seen how to do the floating bouncy gradient, the lovable style, and you saw how we integrated the character rigging into the flow. I'm going to show you how to do the UI animation like a pro. To add that web page, we're going to make all of that in a new composition. So now let's collapse all of this on our preview, that is project manager window. So we're going to click on this icon here to create a new composition. Here we're going to leave the duration and frame rate to be the same thing, but we're going to change the resolution. So here we're going to make it 1700 by 1080. So, and it is going to give you this. So we're going to go to the rectangle tool here, right here, this one, select it, then double click on it. That is going to add you a perfect rectangle that fill in the space. So we're going to go into rectangle one and also change the roundness. So I'm going to change the color to a bit darker version. First of all, here we're going to have a lot of elements on this composition, so it is advisable you keep everything organized by naming them. So let's name this main page BG. So now let's change the color. I want it to be dark like we have with Lovable. Somewhat like this is okay. So before I start assembling the web page and then animating it, I have to clear one thing here. You see, this part of the tutorial depends on your client or what you want to do. So the web page is not consistent with what Lovable have because I don't have access to their webs that is their website dashboard. So I created something that looked similar. This is also applicable to when you talk to a client. Your client will provide these informations that you're going to use to build this web page animation. Most likely, most of the time, they are going to provide you that, but in case they don't give you that, ask for login, then you go in there and create the screenshot yourself, bring them into After Effects and do everything I'm going to show you right now. In some cases, you need to take it to Adobe Illustrator to create all different shapes of the website. You can use Photoshop. You can also use After Effects itself, which I find more convenient. So with that talk out of the way, so let's expand all my assets. So you can see a folder here I named web page. Okay, on the asset folder, you see this folder web screenshot, meaning I took the screenshot. And by the way, this screenshot, I just took it from a random shopping website, a Nigerian website that sells clothes that looks like social marketplace. So now let me start bringing in the address bar. So I'm going to select this and drop that onto the timeline directly. You can see that, but the first thing I'm going to do is to scale this up now so that you can see everything. So if you look at this, this is not the same thing with the color we have here. In your own case, it might be the same thing, but in this case, I want this search bar to have the dark background. So I'm going to add the change to color effect. So let's go back to the effects and presets panel and search for change to color. So I'm going to select that, drag and drop it into the search bar. So I'm going to select the from option on the property here and select this search bar color. Then I'm going to select the background here as what I want it to return to. After selecting the colors, you will see that nothing is happening. This is very important. This tool is very handy when you do SaaS animation. This very particular change to color. It is very handy. It has helped me in the past, so pay attention. Now, after you select the color, nothing has changed. What you're going to do is to change this hue to hue and lightness. And automatically, some of these lines and details are going to go away. You can see if you go through left and right, you see that some of the tiny details are gone. So you're going to use the lightness value to bring that back. So we're going to reduce it from 50 downward. So the further you go down, the better you can see some of these details. Have to go down seriously to somewhere here. Let's say like 0.5. Sorry, I've been modifying the saturation instead of the lightness. So I'm going to return this to the way it is. Now, I'm actually supposed to adjust the lightness downward. So as you adjust the lightness, you will see those values coming up. You see that? You see the search bar having those values. You just need the barest minimum values. So now we have the perfect details. So if I change this to full, you will see that that is very okay. You see everything is perfect right here. In some cases, you may need to remove the address bar in case if that is the URL there, in case if you go there to take the screenshots yourself. So, but outside that, what we're going to do now is to bring in, first, let's scale this down. So we're going to take it to the top. Just want something like this. So before that, what I'm going to do now, you see there is a red there and there is a white. I don't need all of that. So I will pick the rectangle tool and mask that out. Do not worry if your first attempt is not perfect. Just leave it. Then drop the masking tool and double click on the mask. So here now you can adjust. You can use these handles to adjust to what you want. So if we fit this back, you will see we have cropped out all of that. So we're gonna hit enter key to set our modification. So but there's one more thing I'm gonna do. I want to move the anchor point to the center so that I can perfectly align this horizontally. So now let's hold down Control key and double click on the anchor point tool at the top there. So I'm gonna go to the align window and align this to center. So this is perfectly okay now. Yes, this is okay. So I'll just hit P to move it up. Hit P so that it will perfectly sit at the top on the y-axis somewhere here. So we now have our address bar. This is coming up together. So we need to pick the rectangle tool again, and then we're going to create the white area of the page. So we're going to come here right at this tip and come here to this point. So it's actually you divide the size of the page into 4 and make the white area 3/3 of the entire division, you know. So let's make it like this. Beautiful. It is not written on stone. So now I'm gonna hit the selection tool and also move the anchor point to the center of the shape layer. So I'm gonna name this to white area, white BG. So now that we have that, we're going to change the color, of course, to white. Usually I don't like setting it to completely white because I'm going to change this after all later when I start bringing other elements because they really need to look alike. So I'm going to set it to a very high light gray. We're going to also go to the rectangle 1 inside the white area. Then we set the roundness. We're going to increase the roundness like this, just slightly to something like this. Let's go back to the project manager window. Like I said, I've already imported everything I needed for this project. Now let's bring in this particular area. Oh, but first let me bring the major product. So I'm gonna drag and drop it right inside here. So this is where I need to change this white area to look exactly like this type of white here. So what I will do now is to select the white BG and then go to the color on the top, then use the eyedropper tool to just copy the white directly. This is because by the time I start slicing all of this into this area, I don't want it to look like it is very far different, looking unprofessional and dirty like that. So now it will look smooth whatever animation I do with that white background. So now let's adjust this. So here I'll bring it here. When I'm here, I'm gonna hit S to scale it up. This is why hence you'll be scaling up. That is why you need to recreate it in After Effects, or you use the Illustrator so that these resolutions can be retained. So this is what I have. So the first thing I'm going to do now is to select it and then set the track matte to this white area. So I'm going to select it here on the track matte window. I will pick it to the white background. That is going to automatically hide the white background, but that is not what I want. So I'm going to click the visibility again to bring it back. So this way, whatever I get out of this page still stays within the confines and the shape of that white area background. So even if I move the page left to right, I still have it within that shape. You see it? So I still have it within that shape, nothing changes. I'm going to start splitting all these items one after the other. That way I'll be able to animate them individually and give them a fluid movement. So first, let's go to the top toolbar and then select the rectangle tool. So once you have the rectangle tool, I want to separate this header from the rest of the body because it doesn't have to move at all. So I will just select, click, and drag. You see nothing happens because I did not select the layer I want to mask out. So I'm gonna undo that. Then I'll select the layer. Then my rectangle tool is still active. So I'm gonna draw a shape around it. You see that is automatically masked out. So it doesn't have to be perfect. you can drop the rectangle tool by hitting V, or you select the selection tool. Now you double click on the mask so that you can shape it properly. So you come to the preview window and double click on it. This control, these shapes, these knobs are going to be active. Then you start shaping it the way you want it. I want this header to be static, so I can just pretty much leave it like this and hit the enter key. So once you hit the enter key, first I need to keep my timeline organized. So I'm going to use colors to keep it organized. Before I start duplicating this layer for other part of the web page, I'm going to go in here and set a color. Any color will do. I just wanted to make sure I have visual control or identification for each of these group of layer that is going to be moving. Now let's duplicate it now. So mind you, we already mask it with the white area of the page, so a duplicate will always mask it. That is the advantage of 2025. I think that started between 2023. So you can use one shape layer or one mask to mask multiple layers. If you are using earlier versions, you may need to create mask for each of these layers, so bear that in mind in case if it is not working for you properly, that is what is wrong. So what I'm going to do now is to hit M on the keyboard. That is going to reveal the mask on the timeline. So all I was simply going to do, instead of picking the rectangle tool again and draw, I'll just double click on the mask and start moving this around. So I'm going to need this very particular group of items, so I'm going to mask that around. So I'll also hit the enter key. I think I missed one part of the web page, so I'm going to double click. I'm going to Ctrl D again to duplicate this one. So once I have it duplicated, then I'm going to double click on the mask again and then move it upward to reveal this part. So I just needed that part after the header. It needs to be visible because it is going to move. So I'll just arrange it, the hierarchy, I'll just move it back here. Then you can rename this, by the way, if you want to. You can keep renaming it, but me, I'm okay with the color identification. So I'm gonna duplicate this one again. So once I have it duplicated, then I'm gonna double click on the mask again. So I need this guy, this model, I need it to be part of the web page. Mind you, you have to follow your client's instruction, what they want visible. Me, I'm just doing this to show you what is possible using this lovable style, you know. So I will just hit enter key. So I'm going to repeat this to get all the elements I want on the page. Now that I have all the elements I need, I'm going to select this and move it around. So first of all, this active selection, so I'm going to move it to the left side of the page. So I'm going to select this guy and move him down here. Then I'm going to select this item right here and move it to the right side of the page. So what I will do next is to bring another element that is like a page slider to put it on this space. So I'm going to go to the item again. So I'm going to select this and drop it also on the timeline. So I'll make sure this is on the top. So once I have it here, this is it. So I'm going to give it a different color code for the layer. So I'll just select a different color that is contrasting with this other layer so that I'll be able to know that this is something different. So for this slider, I'm going to also use the rectangle tool to mask some part out. So I'll select the mask, that is the rectangle tool, and then just draw a simple mask like this. It doesn't matter if it is perfect. So I'm going to double click on the mask and adjust it. So now I will hit enter key to stop the cropping. I'm going to hold down Control key on the keyboard, double click on the anchor tool. That way I'll move the anchor point to the center. Why is it important? Because I want to uniformly scale this to fit it to the space. So hit S on the keyboard while the layer is still selected, then drop the scale like this, and then you move it. Let's scale down a bit so that it will fit properly. So beautiful. This is all the layers we need for this web page right now. So let's animate this. But before we start animating this web page, we need to add some text on this dark area on the, it is called sidebar. No, the sidebar elements needs to be here. So I'm just gonna pick the text tool and add text here. So I have added the text on the sidebar. Let's take a look at it. If you pull in, you will see that it's just simple text. Then I used rectangle to create these gray areas. Then also this box area where I added the text. I then proceed to use the ellipse tool to draw these circles and these little dots you see here. Then this red rectangle play button, I used the pen tool to just draw a simple rectangle shape, color it, and then twist it to this level. Pretty simple and self-explanatory. Every other thing here is just a simple text tool, which I believe you will know how to add. This is it. So these are just simple text and then rectangle tool to create this, because if I want to create it in this video is going to take a whole long of time and I don't want this video to get to 2 hours. So now that we have this, let's start animating. So first we fit this back to screen. Now I'm going to select all these layers that I want animated. So I will select including the text bar. So I'm going to select it and then select every other layer. You see, I selected everything except, of course, this header that I want to be static, and also this top search bar or the address bar. So what I'm going to do now is to come to, let's say, 1 second forward in time, hit P on the keyboard to reveal the position property for everything. So I'm going to set a keyframe for that. Then I'll also hold down Shift key and then hit T on the keyboard to reveal the opacity keyframe, while still keeping the position keyframe visible. So I'll set a keyframe for opacity here. Then I'm going to come back to 0. So here, I'm going to make sure I move everything slightly down. So I'm going to go to the bottom layer so that way, if I move it, the rest of the layer moves. Because if I move the top layer, that is the top layer hierarchy, the bottom layers will not move for some reasons. I don't know if that is a bug with After Effects or it is intentionally designed that way. So now let's move it. I can see that the header is moving, so but that is not a problem. So now that we have it moved, then we're going to set the opacity to 0 for all of them. So you can see everything has disappeared. Then if you scroll through the timeline, everything comes up. Now let's look for the header and make sure it is not moving. So I'll just select the header here. That is the header. So all I just need to do is to delete the keyframe by clicking on the stopwatch again. So this time around, that header will not move again. So but the rest of the body would. So what I'm going to do now is to set the timing. So I'm going to move my time indicator to this place and move all the opacity keyframes to this point. I will have done it while keyframing, but I just find this to be easy. So now I'm going to select all the keyframes, highlight all of them. So I'm going to ease the keyframe, go to keyframe assistant, then ease. You can also hit F9 for this purpose. So I'm going to edit the speed graph for all of them. for all the layers. So let's set the preview limit. Hit N on the keyboard. That will set the preview limit from where the time indicator is. Now let's hit spacebar to preview. You see the movement. It all depends on what you want. If this is too fast for you, all you need to do is to select all the keyframes. So once you have all the keyframes selected, you hold down the Alt key on the keyboard or Option key on Mac, then you just stretch it out a bit like this. This is 2 seconds. So I may have to leave it to this one. So if you preview, you will just see the power of what you've done. So I will leave this at 2 seconds for the time being. You can adjust that later. So what I'm going to do now is to offset this on the timeline, because they cannot all come at the same time. That is not going to look organic and professional. So the first one I'm going to make sure to come first is the top bar here. This one need to come first, then followed by the slider. So the slider is the topmost one. No, the text is the topmost one, while the banner is this one. So it comes first. So every other thing needs to be offset. So I will select all these ones and offset them backward a bit. Now everything is organic. So if you preview now, you see they all come in different time. Beautiful. So but I'm going to split this text into pieces, because when I added the text, I pre-composed it so that it will become one element. That way it is easier for me to control it using this animation style, because if you look at it, it has many elements. So if I want to leave each of them on its individual layer, it's going to be taking me a lot of time, and that is not the style I was even going for if you compare it with the lovable style. So what I'm going to do now is to carry the rectangle tool and start masking this text into pieces. I'll first of all mask this one out. So once I mask this one out, I'll drop the selection tool, then I'll duplicate it on the timeline, offset it a bit, double click on the mask tool. So we're basically repeating the same step we did with the main web page. So but this is for the sidebar. I just want it to be organic. Then I'll hit enter, Ctrl D to duplicate, then I'll offset it as well. Then I'll double click on this and then move this to have this come in. So now I'll offset this one too. Then I'll just move the mask downward to reveal the last part of the text, which is this one. If you like, you can cut it into more pieces than what I have here. This is just an example for the tutorial. So if you hit spacebar again, you see that that sidebar doesn't come in once this time around. You see it very fluid, beautiful. Now that the UI is ready, so we're gonna start making that transition, that bouncy transition, where after the UI pops up, then it pulls in and another typing start and then pulls back. So I need to offset it to start from where that should be. So I have offset it on the timeline. Let's just crop to make sure we are there. It has to start from here. So let's move it to that space. So the next thing we're going to need to do is to scale this down. So we scale it down to about this point like this. So let's hide it temporarily so that we'll be able to keyframe it to transition into this. So there is a lot of technical work here. You have to pay attention carefully, because if you miss any step here, it is not going to look professional at all. It will just look jerky and all of that. So now let's move this forward a bit. Now we're going to use this scaling keyframe right here. So if you look at it, this is where the scaling finished. So I'm gonna hit S while the layer is still selected, though it is hidden, set a keyframe. Then I will come back here. I will then unhide that web page. I will scale it down. I will scale it down to this level. Then I will select these handles and pull it in like this on the y-axis, somewhat like this. So if you get here, you see that. So this final scaling has to be the same thing with this box right there. Let's move to the last keyframe. So I'll just scale this a bit so that it will tally or match that one. You can drop the opacity to see it if you want to. Somewhat like this is okay. So now let's ease the keyframe. So we're gonna also animate the opacity. You see that? So let's animate the opacity. Let's come back here. So Shift T to bring up the opacity, then put a keyframe. Then let's come back to this first keyframe right here on the scale, and then drop the opacity to 0. Beautiful. So now if you go, you have something like this. The opacity has to come very sooner. Let's tighten the keyframe space. Beautiful. This is what we want. So now let's move this layer on the hierarchy. Let's move it below the mouse pointer here. Let's move it below it. So that way the mouse still shows on top. So now let's time the keyframe. I'm going to look for this layer where it is scaling up, although that should be on the search. So I'll just simply double click on it and look for the timing. So I'll hit U while the layer is selected so that will reveal the keyframe. So this should be the last keyframe. I'll just be going back and forth to make sure that aligns properly. So I will hit U to reveal the keyframes here. You see it doesn't align. There is still little space here because it needs to align for the transition to be smooth. So now I'll go back again to the search and come to this first keyframe here. Then I'll go back to the main composition again. You see that? Did you see that? You see the difference? So it looks like we have to pull this keyframe to this point. So, but we have to move the entire layer to this point. Then select these keyframes and put it here. Yes, so now we have to look for that last keyframe spot. Then let's just use this to select that. Then we'll come back to the main composition and now set that. So this way everything is gonna sync. So if you preview now, you see that the movement is a lot better now. Beautiful. So there is still space here. We need to still scale that part to be up. Let's correct that. If you come here, so let's create a new, just create a new keyframe to replace the other one. Something like that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to come back here to this keyframe. Then I will delete this one and move that new keyframe to that point. That way I still have the same timing. So I'll just go into the graph editor to make sure everything is fine. So now there is a lot of things we need to do. So let's go back inward into this web page. So if you look at this, the web page is not really morphing like we have the main listing. So if you see, it is not morphing out. So we need to, it just came out square like that. So we need to create an animation inside of this so that we can control that. So what I'm going to do is go back to the black background, the bottom layer on this hierarchy for this web page. I'm going to go down, then this shape layer, which is the background. So what I'm going to do is to come about this point, that is about 2 seconds forward in time. I'm going to expand the property, then I'll go to the rectangle one. Then what I want to do is to keyframe the roundness. So I'll set a keyframe for the roundness here. Then I'll move that to the first 0 second. Then I'm going to up the roundness, up it quite a bit like this, very significantly. Yes, so you see that it has rounded corners now. So we're going to select the keyframes and then ease them. This is going to help us have a fluid transition. So now the problem now is that you can see some overlapping from the sidebar and also the web page. So it is simple to fix. We are going to use track matte to fix all of that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to select all of these web pages element, all of them. We're going to select all of them except of course the black BG, which is the bottom layer. Now that I have it selected, I'm going to Ctrl+Shift+C to pre-compose it. So I'll just call it web content. So make sure you move all attributes to the new composition and then hit OK. So this is going to provide us to be a single layer. That way, we now set the track matte to the main BG. You see, nothing is falling out again. So we're going to select all of these sidebar elements that will broke into pieces, and then also set the track matte of this to the main background. You can see it is also cut out. So if you go back to the main composition now, you see that everything is working as planned. You can see some irregularities. So it's just a simple matter. It's because of the track matte, the main BG was hidden, hence it was a track matte for the rest of the layer. So we just double click on this, then go back to the bottom layer here and then unhide it. It will still be masking that part out. So if you go back to the main composition now, you see that has been fixed. You see that. So beautiful. To make this transition very mature, there is one more thing we need to do. You know, it shouldn't stay like this because the transition came and then scale into the pages. That is, it's zoomed in into the bottom area, left area of the web page. So to do that, we're gonna right click on the timeline and create a new null object. So we're gonna make sure we align this control to the center. Then we're gonna bring it down to this point, this empty space where we want to pull into. Let's bring it there. So once we bring it there, it is very important you rename everything. So I'm going to call it bottom control. You can call it whatever, just identify that it is the controller you need to use to pull into the page. So I'm going to make this new web page its child. So I'll pick with the parenting to that side. So what I'm going to do now, from this point here when the page is still moving, where the page is still moving, I will set a keyframe for the scale for this controller. So I will hit S to reveal the scale property, set a keyframe, and also I will need to set a position keyframe as well for that. So I just held down shift and then hit P to reveal the position property. So I'll just move to this point where the whole thing stops moving. Then I'm going to move this up. Don't worry about the background there that is showing, because we're going to cut that out later. So just follow me. Then we'll move it here. Then we're going to scale in significantly to something like this. So to something like this. So you can adjust it to whatever you like. So I'm going to select these both keyframes and then also easy ease. That way I'll be able to also edit the speed graph so that it will go smoothly and fluidly like the lovable style. So with this kind of arrangement with multiple controller, it makes everything look like it is floating. You know, before one motion ends, another one is kicking in. That is why multiple controller is used to create that fluidness, that master fluidness, because with just a single controller, you cannot create that. But using multiple controller on top of each other allows you to start moving even when the first controller has not finished moving in. So now if you scroll through your timeline, you will see what I mean. Beautiful. So now let's create that second typing. So we need to create that little interface here, the one we have at the center right here. So let's quickly do that. Now let's start by creating a new composition to create that second interface. So Ctrl N on your keyboard to bring up these composition settings. That is the new composition setting. So we're going to name this maybe the modifier interface, or just call it anything. I'll call my interface 2. We're going to leave this to 1700 by 1080, or let me just simply change this to 1920. So instead of 1080 here, I think I'm going to use 700 here. So I just wanted it to have that long shape, that is rectangle, that long rectangular shape. So we can always come to the composition settings to modify this. So nothing is written on stone, and also this will depend on what you are building for a client. Here we are copying the lovable style, so that is why I'm using these settings. Now that we have it, we're going to add a temporary solid layer. This is going to act as a guide for us, so that we'll be able to place it in the other interface, that is in the main composition. Then we see how it is going. So we don't need to name this because we're going to delete it anyway. So now that it is white, we're going to go back to our main composition, which is this one. So what we're going to do now is to drag this new interface and drop it right on top of the space here. So I'm going to hit S. This is because I want to scale it down. Beautiful. You see, I have scaled it down and it is looking just the size I wanted. It's looking like that. So I'm going to use the position. So when I hit P, I will use the position to appropriate it to the right place. I think this is okay. For me, this is okay. So I'm going to go with this for this example. So it must not really be perfect like what the lovable have it placed, because yours might change when you are working with your client. So let's be flexible here, right? So now that I have it right here, so the next thing I'm going to do before I move my timeline any further, I'm going to make sure this is now a child of that edge controller we created earlier. That way, if it pulls back with it, and if it moves up, it moves with it. So now let's make it a child of that controller by whipping the parenting box to it. Now that we have made it a child of that controller, so if we move this time indicator backward, you see everything goes now with it. You see that? Everything goes with it. So the only difference is that because it started too early, so what we're going to do is to pull it to this point. where it started scaling up. That is this point. So we're gonna offset it right here to this place. So we've just set, before we even created the interface, we need to set the timing, or we just did the timing. You see that? So that comes in. Beautiful. So now let's double click it and go back to it, or you just simply click on the composition on the timeline. So we're gonna now delete this, because why? We don't need it. We only used it as a guide. So now let's create that first box, because in the example, when the animation was typing in the text, the box was expanding. So we need to use a shape layer for that. We are not going to animate it just yet, but we need to make sure we have that box there. So select the rectangle tool. So we're going to draw a rectangle right here. Make sure you just make it a little bit small, so that by the time we want to expand it, it expands to this place. So we're going to make it somewhat like this. This should be okay. So we'll still have space to expand. Now make sure you move the anchor point to the center. You already know how to do that. So now let's open it up. On the timeline, we're going to expand the rectangle 1, and then we'll expand the rectangle part 1. There we are going to find the roundness. So we just tweak the roundness a bit. Yes, somewhat like this. If you want it too obvious, then you do. But something like this is okay for this tutorial. Or let me just pull it further a bit. Okay, something like this should be okay. Not too much. So do not forget that we need a color. If we like, we just need to set it to gray, but you can set it to whatever color you like. So we're going to also set a stroke color. I think that is going to be brighter a bit. So I'm going to use a brighter gray so that you can see it despite, or even if the YouTube compression is there. So I'll hit OK. So I'm going to also increase the point. Let me see if this is okay first. Okay, I'm just going to increase it from 4 to 6. Just a little bit. I just wanted to have it there. So let's make it 6, because currently this is 4. The next thing we're going to need to do now is to create those icons on the bottom of this box. Let's take a look at the video from Lovable. You see that those icons on the bottom need to be created. The text is something we have already covered from the previous tutorial. That is, in this same tutorial, in the previous section, we have covered how to do that text typing and all of that. So the main thing that we need to show here is the box animation that I have not shown you, and then creating those icons. Like I said, you can do them in Illustrator, but one of the advantage of doing it in After Effects is because, like here, we need to expand the box while it is typing, so we have a little bit more flexibility doing that here, because if you bring a vector file from Illustrator, we still need to convert it to shape to be able to do the box. So why not just create everything inside After Effects using the vector shape layers? So now let's create those icons. So the first one I'm going to create, I'm going to create a new composition just for the icons. So I'm going to go to new. So I'll just make it 500 by 500 just to be safe. 500 by 500 resolution. So I'm going to hit OK. So it is important you name this thing, you name the comp, because this is going to be lots of icon on the timeline. So the first one I'm going to show you how to create, then you can use the same principle or the same step to create the rest of the icon. This way we keep the tutorial as short as possible. So now we're going to name this filter. You know that filter button where you click and then filter your settings. So I'm going to hit OK. If you take a look at the filter, it has one line coming from the right, then a circle, and then the other one is reversed. So let's create it now. First, let's select the ellipse tool. Then we create the cycle. Make sure you hold Ctrl and Shift. That way you keep this cycle perfect. So I'm going to remove the fill color if I like. I think it is important I remove the fill color here because I only need the outline. So I'll just increase the stroke thickness. I can also change the color to be a little bit on the lighter gray side. So this is what you got. So the next thing I'm going to create now is the line. This is simple. After Effects provides us with the tools to create different type of complex shapes and icon. So once you create the first dot, hold down shift so that you keep the line straight. Now you go into the property, then the content, then the shape one, then the stroke. Then here, the line cap, we're going to set it to rounded. So now, I'm going to pick this. I think I want to make it shorter a bit. I need to make this shorter. So while making it shorter, hold down your shift so that everything moves in line, that is in straight line. So now, let me increase the outline. Maybe something like this is okay. So I will select both layers, of course. I will select both layers. If you like, you can rename because there are just going to be 4 layers here. But if you don't rename, it's still okay because there are only but 4 layers. So hit P. I just want to center it. I just want to center it a bit. It must not be perfect because, of course, you're going to use it somewhere else. So now that we have this, you can also decide to increase the thickness of this roundness, that is the ellipse. Maybe we'll move it a little bit up on the figure here, somewhat like this. So I'm going to select both layers now again. Then I will just duplicate it. Then I will move it on the top hierarchy so that I will now have it as a group. So if you are not renaming, you can do well to just by changing the color so that you know these are set of different shape. So just feel free to set any color. So this way on the timeline, or I have it distinctly different. So what I'm going to do is to hit P on my keyboard still. I'm going to hit P on the keyboard. Then I'm going to move it down on the y-axis. So somewhat like this. So the only thing I'm going to do now is to deselect. Then I'm going to select the cycle, the second duplicate, and also move it on the position X somewhere here. Then I'll select this line and move it to the left. So that way we have the reverse of what we had in that side. So you can reduce the size of the cycle. The way I'm looking at it, we need to reduce that. But before that, let's select both of them and then move it on the y-axis again, a little bit downward. If you like, you can leave it like this, but let me just reduce the cycle. So I'll select the cycle now, hit S on the keyboard. Then I'm going to drop this to, let's say, 80. You see, it is not scaling uniformly because the anchor point is not on the center. So let's double click on the anchor point tool by holding down Control so that we have it at the center. That way it scales in the same position. So now I can set the new figure because I've aligned the control to center. So let me just set it to 80 like I did earlier. Yes, 80 is okay. So I can also move it inward a bit. So I'll select this one too. I'll move the anchor point, basically repeating the same thing that I did before. So I think the icon is ready. So what I'm going to just do is just visually align it, everything to the center. So I'll Control A to select everything, then hit P on the keyboard to reveal the position property for all of them. So remember, with this version of After Effects, if you are using the top layer to move these things, only one is going to move. So we'll have to go to the bottom and use the bottom layer. Remember, it must not be perfect. This is okay. So I'm going to use the same step to create the rest of the icons. Now I have used the same step to create the rest of the icons, and I placed it inside a folder just to keep everything organized on my project manager window. With explainer video, you're going to have a lot of elements materials to work with on your project manager window. So keeping everything organized is to your advantage. So I created a folder called icons, and then I placed everything right here. So now let's start bringing them to the timeline. So first of all, I'm going to bring the button. So when I bring it right here, you see the AI button right there. Then I will hit S on the keyboard to scale it down just to give it its own position. Beautiful. So I'll just bring it to the right bottom here. That is where it's where. I think the next one is the filter button that we created before. So now I'm still gonna scale that down a bit. I think this is getting better. So I still need to reduce the size of the image icon. I think that is too big. So on the scale, let's make it 20. Okay, so let me position it properly. Then I'll add their equivalent text, that is corresponding text. So I've added the text. You know, I already showed you how to add text to any composition. So I needed not to record that to keep this tutorial as short as possible. So I added text attached to the image, then edit to this one, and then mode to this icon. Then I use the pen tool to create this little drop down arrow here next to mode. So the next thing I'm going to do is to arrange this better the way it is on the level on the lovable style. So now let's select all of this. I think I need to scale down this image still. 16 is still pretty too big, so let me make it 14. I'll stay with 14 even if it's big. Yes, so I'll just move it next to the attach. Hold down shift to keep things organized. So I'll select it with the attach, and then hold down shift to move it close to the plus icon. So I'll also select this edit icon, move, space it a bit, select the text with it. I'll also select this, select the mode, and then select the drop down arrow, and also move it slightly to the left. I think this is the arrangement I saw on the lovable style. So I'm going to leave it like this. Then this button, I'm just going to put it slightly above here. So now we have it exactly the way we have it. So the next thing we're going to do, to the top, I'll select one, then right click, and then add that first text animation. So the first text here is Ask Lovable. We already have this text actually, so you can always copy and bring it here. So now I have added the typewriter effect. So now let's arrange things now and start animating the box. So if you scrub through the timeline, you see that typing on. Yes, beautiful. So let's unhide the first text, which is Ask Lovable. So I'm going to unhide it here. So this is where it should start. Now, what I'm going to do, let me see what I have completely. Yes, beautiful. So now I'm going to select the top text to make sure it starts exactly at that point. So that means I'll offset it like this. Beautiful. So that is the point I want it to start. Then what I'm going to do here, I'll select the lovable. Then maybe just 1 second, it disappears. So I'll hit T on the keyboard to set an opacity keyframe. Then I'll go to 1 second forward in time and just set the opacity to 0. So, and I'm setting the stage for the typing, that animation you saw. So it first shows Ask Lovable, which is the same thing with what we had on the search bar. You can take a look at that. So we have this, then it disappears, this start typing. So the only thing I'm going to do now is one thing. First of all, I need to bring in this to this point. This one here, this add the typing on text. So I'll select it, hit P on the keyboard. I want to position the first typing frame. So I want to position it just above the lovable. You see, somewhere here. Yes. You see that? If the lovable disappears, it starts typing. Beautiful. This is what I want. So I'll go right here to this point. before I start typing the second line, I will add a keyframe for the position. Take note, this is the basic or the foundation for expanding that box while it is typing. So when I add a keyframe on the position, then I'll just move to when the typing starts showing somewhere here, and then move it up. Beautiful. So once I move it up like this, if you take a look, this should be very fast. So let me preview if it's not too fast. Okay, it is too fast. So let me just expand the position property a little bit. That is the position keyframe. Beautiful. You see, once you preview now, the lovable disappears and it starts typing. Beautiful. You can increase the speed by closing the typing keyframes. Close the gap in between. So these are the gaps in between. If you like, you can just close it up. But if you close it up, it is going to affect this your timing for this. So we are almost at the end of the tutorial. So now when I go here, it expands. So this is where we need to expand the box right at the bottom. So let's scroll down to the bottom and select the box. So we need to expand its own property, then expand the content. You will see rectangle 1, expand it, then you will see rectangle part 1. Currently, we cannot modify its scaling without deforming the roundness of this. It is going to deform completely. Let me show you what I mean. Once this is selected and you want to increase the scale, you see it is going to scale both sides up and down. That is, if you are scaling it up on the y-axis, you see it is scaling up and down, and it is deforming the roundness of the box. So what do you do in this case? So to have only the upper part goes up, we're going to need to convert this to a Bezier. So now we'll select it, right click, and then convert to Bezier part. That's this one, convert to Bezier part, select it. Now we can now modify this individually from the bottom side. So what we need to do is to expand the part. Once you expand the part, you select it, you see those controls, you see they are visible now. So we need to have a keyframe here. So once you have this keyframe, do not worry, just hit U. Let's hide every other property. Then we have only the keyframe. So we're going to come to this place where the font is moving up. That is, the typing is moving up. So the first keyframe for the position here. So we're going to go down to, on this box, hit U to reveal that keyframe we created. So this is the keyframe right here. So we're going to move it to that point. Now that we have it at that point, so we're going to go up again and look for the second keyframe. So we're just going to hit this arrow to go to the second position keyframe. Then we'll go to the bottom here. Then we're going to select these 4 knobs here. So we can drag outside and highlight it all. So once you have it highlighted, then we're gonna move it up completely to match what we have, something like this. Now if you look at the timeline, a new keyframe has been added. So if you preview now backward, you will see it happening in real time. Beautiful. You see it expanding. That is all we need. So now let's go back to our main composition. If you preview, you will see that we have a lot going on, like what we had in the example. You see what we just created, typing in and the box expanding. So now let's add that mouse pointer that clicked on this AI button for some changes to happen on the page preview. So now, but before that time, let's proceed. Then let's select the mouse pointer here because we already have it on the timeline. Let's just duplicate it and move it up now to the top hierarchy here. So let's move it up to the top hierarchy. So now that we have it there, we're going to hit U to reveal all its keyframe. I think it is high time we remove the keyframes, all of them, both the scale and the position. Let's remove all the keyframe. Then we select it and align it to center so that we can see it, or we can just pull in to see its position currently right here, or we can simply leave it and then move it to the point we can see it here. So it's either you remove it or you just do it the other way, you know. So I'll just bring it here. Beautiful. So I will just bring it to that point where the AI button is. So I think the hand is a little bit too big. So I'm gonna reduce the scale. Here is 35, so maybe we should have 28. Okay, yes, this is perfect. So I'm gonna use this 28. So you see it happens here. Immediately it finished typing, that is when it clicks. It comes there and it clicks. This is where the typing finished. So on the position, I'm gonna set a keyframe. And also on the scale, I'm gonna set a keyframe. That way I already have a mark. So now I'm gonna move back. I'm gonna move back to this point, somewhere here, and then move this out of frame on the position. So I'll move it out of frame from the bottom so we can see it coming in, then clicking. So we need to create the clicking. So let's reduce this scale to about 20. Beautiful. So we're going to move forward and then copy the first keyframe and paste it right there. That is the first keyframe for the scale. So if we preview now, you see it comes in, click. Beautiful. So when it finished clicking, the hand should also go down. So I'm going to copy this last keyframe, Ctrl C, Ctrl V on the position. Then I'll copy this first keyframe now and move the hand down, because a lot of things has to happen here and the hand has to go away. So after the clicking now, this is where we need to make the page pull back again, and then we'll have that 3D page interface balancing. So let's do that quickly. But before we're going to do that, to be able to do that smoothly, we need to add another control, meaning we have to add a node object that will control that. So not only that, we're going to change some of these layers to 3D. So now let's move back to this point. To this point where we can see the entire page. Beautiful. So now I'm going to add a new controller. So I'll right click, then go to new and add a new null object. So I'm going to call this 3D control. Then I'll make sure I align the anchor point to the center of the null object. Then I'll also align the null object to the center of the composition or the web page. So I'll use the align panel here to do that. So now I'm going to select that last edge control and just simply make it a child of this 3D null control. So now here is where the magic happens. Now I'm going to select this. I'm going to select this control, select this control, select this interface, and select the web page and make it a 3D layer. So now we have these pages happening in 3D. So what I'm going to do is to select this very particular one, this first control, hit U, so that will reveal its keyframe. So if you look at it, it comes here, then the mouse click. So immediately the pointer click, that is when the page start going back. So I'm going to create a new position and scale keyframe at this point. So now I'm going to come from here and copy this first keyframe for that control, Ctrl C, and then paste it. You see the page going back to its previous position. But in the example, when it goes back, it happens to become 3D, and the instruction to create a new sidebar was done. So now let's do the 3D first. First, let's look at the curve, the speed graph. For this, once you select this, the keyframe, you see the speed graph is not okay. So I can simply pull it in a bit here. So I'm going to do for that both. So now if you preview, you see that it is going back in real time. So I can also expand this so that it will go slowly but smoothly. Beautiful. Now this is where the magic happens. Remember, we already made everything 3D. So let's hit rotation on the 3D controller. Hit R to expose the rotation. Now it is time to set a keyframe, but we have to align it with the first keyframe here where it starts changing. So we need to create a keyframe for X, Y, and Z. In your situation, it could be different, the style you want to go for. So you might just need to keyframe either X or Y, or X and Y, or Z and Y, depending on the combination you want to use. But now I'll have to go to the last keyframe for this one here. This is where everything turns into 3D. So I'll have to start modifying it to look exactly how I want it. So let's modify the X first. Then let's modify the Y. This is how it turned into. Then I'll modify the Z. This is simply what we had in the example. This is it. But if you take a look at this, you can still see that previous layer showing. So all we need to do is go to the search. We'll move here, this point here. Everything below it has to be hidden. So we'll go to the search, all of this search. So I think it is this one, this very particular one here, just below the search typing. Yes, it is hidden. So we're going to come back to this point where everything is scaled up. Then we can cut it from here. So let's Ctrl+Shift+D to do that. So we just delete the excess. Now, if this goes back, we don't have that. You see it? So now let's go back to our controller up. Select all the keyframes right here. Hit F9 on your keyboard to ease. So now we have this going back and then into this 3D position. So now let's look at how to change this. So if you look at it from this point, the interface needs to change. So we'll come back here to the first keyframe right here. Then we'll look for that web page. We need to go in there and create that other interface that is added, you know. So let's look for the web page, which is this one. So double click on it. You'll see that your time indicator should be at that point, this point here. So we need to remove this element and this element so that we can create that profile and then the stacked. So I'm just going to use some icons to represent that. I'm not going to create it fully. In your own case, you can just use what your client wants to replace that, if this is the style they are going for. So now let's look for that. So I'm going to crop this out. So from here, I'm going to crop it out. I'll Ctrl D to create an excess. Then I'll just simply take out the excess. So from here on, it will not show. So I'll select this one too. And from here on, this will not show as well. So I'll delete the excess. There are other ways of taking out this, but I'll just prefer Ctrl D, then you delete the excess. There are other shortcuts to do that. So now we have this. So we're going to create a simple icon to signify that this is the profile. So I'm going to pick the ellipse tool. So in your own case, you can just bring in what your client wants. Make sure no layer is selected here. I'm going to draw a simple profile image, profile box like this. In all of this, you see that I'm not moving my time indicator because I want to keep that timing correct. So I'll just change the color now. I'll use this cycle to represent that user profile, of course. So now that I have it, I'll just add text and place it just below that. This is just an example, by the way, like I said. So I will create another rectangle. So I will select the rectangle tool. I will change it to either dark so that it can show. So I'll just change that to maybe $600. So I'm not going to add more than this for the sake of this tutorial to be short. So I'm going to leave it like this. I'll just position it correctly and trim it so that you see what I've done. So I'll just leave it like this. You can add as many information for the user, the profile picture and all of that. You can bring them in like as it is in the Lovable. But for this sake of this tutorial, I just want to show you this. So like I said, the timing now is what we need to work on. So these are the new layer we just created for this. So we're going to select it all, hold down shift and then move it until it snaps to that timeline. That is timeline indicator. So if you go back to the main composition now, if you use, let's close some of these panels, I mean some of the comps. So let's come back to the main composition again. So if you come back here now, you see that immediately it is clicked, it goes back and that profile shows. So let's preview everything. Beautiful. You see, that is just it. Now, the entire section of the explainer video is ready. But there is one thing that professionals do. I want to show you how professionals use stock effects to give their explainer video that final polished look. This is what professionals do. Even when the animation is at its barest minimal, they still use effects like this that I'm going to show you to polish their videos, their explainer videos. So, but in this case now, even the Lovable style, if you take a close look, you will see some effects that are being used during the process of the animation. So now the first thing we're going to add is to add a grain to the video. So that makes it look organic, and natural. So we want to make sure the grain only affects from after the search box and the text backwards. So we're going to select that part of the video. So which is going to be here. You see, if you go to the timeline, you see the search type. Then you see the search, which is also this one. You see, if you hide it, you see it. So anything after here is gonna have some grains. So we're gonna select the layer below it. So then we right click, go to new, and then create a new adjustment layer. So on this adjustment layer, we'll now go to the effects and preset panel to the right of your window. So let's collapse all these other ones so that we can see the effects and preset right here. We're going to search for noise. So there are several types of options here, but we're going to go with the simple noise. Select it, drag it onto the adjustment layer, or you can just simply double click on it from here. So let's increase the amount. Let's choose 5 for a start and see how that looks. That is not looking bad at all. So we can also crank up the number. Let's crank it up to something visible. Yes, this is visible. So let's start reducing it to something you can see despite the YouTube compression. So I'm going to divide this by 2. So I'm going to enter 35. Yes, the YouTube compression still allows you to see this, but actually in real time, this is too much. So I'm going to go with 15. This is what I want. Perfect. If you look at it, this is minimal and this is okay, but maybe YouTube compression will not be able to let you see this. In some places it is even too much, like here where you have the solid. So maybe 5 should be okay. 5 or 6. Let me enter 7. You see, nothing is written on stone. 7 is just perfect for the solid area here, but if you go to where you have multiple colors, that 15 was still okay, but we have to keep a number that is suitable for all the frames. So I'm going to hold on to 7. 7 is perfect now for all sides, everywhere. Yes, 7 is perfect. So you can see we don't have the noise on top of this, but we have the noise below this. That is, anywhere there is anything below the search bar, it is having grain. So that is the first effect. So let me show you the second effect, and you can tactically apply this in several areas. You can keyframe them, adjust them. For the lovable, this noise was not keyframed. So let me show you another place a noise was used. That is here. Another place an effect was used. That is after this clicking. There's an effect that was used here. So let's locate this search bar, which happens to be the top one after the adjustment layer. So if you hide it, you see it is the one. So in the real original video, after clicking, the text disappear before the pop out of the UI animation. So before that, there was a light sweep on the solid search bar. So now let's go to effects and control and search for CC light sweep. So you can see CC light sweep here. We're going to double click on that to automatically add it to the layer. So let's first of all twist the angle. If you like, you can leave the angle like this, but for the lovable, the angle was something like this. So what we're going to do now is to keyframe the center. So now we're going to add a keyframe to the center at this point. Do not worry, we can always offset the keyframe to match whatever we want. So now let's move this outside. We're going to move this outside here. Beautiful. So now we're going to move forward in time some couple of frames. To somewhere here. Then we'll move this center. Sorry. We'll select the CC light sweep here and move the center. You can use this to navigate it and move the center somewhere here. So now if you scrub through your timeline, you will see the light sweep. You see it after it is clicked, you see the light sweep. So we're going to make sure things end before here. So let's hit U to see our keyframe so that we can make adjustments to that. So I'm going to move the keyframes here and here. So now I'm going to add another effect to the typing section of the layer, which is this. You see, if I hide it, the text hides. So I'm going to add linear wipe here, the effect called linear wipe. So linear wipe is there. Double click on it and have it on the text, that is search text. So we're going to come to the first keyframe on the light sweep and set a keyframe for the transition complete. So we're going to set a keyframe again. So, but we need to move to the next keyframe for the light sweep because we want these things to correspond. So let's move to the next keyframe and we set this transition complete to 100. So let's see now, because we need the text to wipe in the direction of the light sweep as well. Beautiful. That is exactly what we want. So if you preview everything now, we just use 3 effects to manipulate everything, but you can see that light here, that light sweep here. So we're going to keyframe that. If you come to this point, you see there is a light on the bar. We don't want that. So we only want that to happen from here. So now we're going to select that layer again. So we're going to go to the light sweep. Now on the light sweep, on the CC light sweep here, we're going to increase the, we're going to reduce the sweep intensity. So we're going to keyframe it. Then we just move back some couple of frames, like 2 or 3, 4, 5 frames. Then we set this intensity to 0. That way we will not see that light sweep from the beginning. Another way is to keyframe it just outside everything. You see that it's not there anymore. Beautiful. So if you don't pay attention, that happens very fast. So with just 3 effects, we have uplifted the style. We use the grain, which is the noise, and then we use the CC light sweep to create a transition. Then we use the linear wipe to wipe out the text after being clicked. You see that? Beautiful. So guys, this is how to elevate your explainer video motion graphics using the lovable style of animation. If you got any question, leave it in the comment and let me know what you think about this kind of tutorial. So if you need more or any question, or if you want my service, leave it in the comment section and I'll do my best to answer all your questions. So guys, until I see you again on the next one, my name is SSB Otaru for Motion Digit Studios.